This is the story of the man who lived for over 80 years without ever laying eyes on a woman. So who was Mihailo Tolotos? And how did he live for so long without ever seeing a woman? Mihailo Tolotos's story begins in Halkidiki, Greece in the 1800s. Back then, Greece was rife with poverty and education was minimal. Mihailo was supposedly born in 1856, but tragically his mother died just a few hours after giving birth due to complications with the labor. Mihailo remained in the hospital while officials waited for his family to claim him, but sadly, no one showed up. The newborn was then abandoned on the steps of the Mount Athos Monastery. The monks had no choice but to take him in and raise him as one of their own. The monks were incredibly strict and committed to their traditions, which included a vow of celibacy. They then raised the boy to follow the same standards. The celibacy rule meant that no women gained entry into their region. The rule dates back to the 10th century and serves to keep the monks pure. Even female animals are prohibited from entering the region, the only exception being female cats that are allowed on the monastery grounds to keep the mouse population under control. Apart from that, every creature that enters has to be male. This has been the rule for thousands of years and is still in place today. There is only a tiny strip of land in the whole region where female visitors may step foot. However, to do this, they need to apply for a permit and they need to adhere to a strict dress code. The monks of Mount Athos Monastery believed that only by abstaining from pleasures and living a strict, simple life could they reach complete spiritual enlightenment. The monks don't interact with women, seek out pleasures, or engage in the ever-growing technological advancements of the outside world. Other rules imposed at the monastery are that monks are not allowed to shave, argue, or fight with one another. So Mihailo grew up abiding by those rules, and as such, when little Mihailo was a child, he didn't get to experience things that other little boys did. He never even saw a car, a plane, a movie, or even a photograph. As the world was advancing, Mihailo Tolotos chose to stay within the monastic sanctuary, hidden away from the modern world. Exposing himself to the wonders and pleasures of life was to spoil his spiritual enlightenment. We don't know for sure if Mihailo chose to avoid the pleasures of the outside world because he truly believed that it would ruin his salvation, or even how much he actually knew about the outside world, because monks were not really allowed to speak about the outside world, even though most monks are men who have lived out in the modern world for most of their lives, and later decided to seek spiritual enlightening by living the life of a monk. Perhaps it was fear that kept Mihailo confined behind the monastery walls. After all, the modern world is plagued by issues such as crime, poverty, homelessness, addiction, backstabbing, dishonesty, betrayal, and heartbreak. The monastery was a safe place with a simple life. They grew their own food. There was no bickering and arguing, no violence, no deceit. The outside world may have sounded too frightening for Mihailo to dare consider leaving. Decades passed. Many new monks came and left. And while stories about the outside world might have fascinated, the risks and dangers may have seemed too high of a price to pay for ruining his journey of enlightenment. It's not hard to imagine what it might have felt like for Mihailo hearing stories about the wonders of the modern world, like the invention of radio broadcasting, electric washing machines, the camera, and handheld power tools. All of these things had occurred within his lifetime. But so did World War I. Mihailo lived until 1938. He passed away at the age of 82. His fellow monks carried out a special burial ceremony for him since he was the only one out of all of them who'd never seen a woman, a rare, unprecedented event that they viewed as a revered quality. All of the other monks had already encountered women in their lives before committing themselves to spirituality. For some, it was their mothers, while some monks had even been married before joining the monastery. Today, Mount Athos is recognized as a World Heritage Site and as a United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, or UNESCO. Tourists and those seeking their own spiritual enlightenment often visit the area, and still, to this day, no women tourists are permitted in the region. This rule has recently been the subject of some controversy, with some suggesting the rule is outdated. Over the years, some people refused to believe that Mihailo Tolotos' story could be possible. There are also no official historical records to confirm his existence, aside from the word of the monastery monks. But soon after his passing, Mihailo's death and the unique story of his life was printed in the obituary section of the Hartford Courant newspaper in Connecticut. The source of the death announcement remains unknown. This led some critics to say that the story was made up by the monks themselves to advertise and encourage young men into a life of celibacy. There are also some critics who don't doubt that Mihailo Tolotos existed, but doubt the claims about him never seeing a woman, since Mihailo was supposedly merely a few days old when he was left outside the monastery. He would still have been dependent on a woman for milk, pointing out that a monastery full of monks would be unable to offer this kind of nourishment to a child, and that baby formula wasn't invented until a decade after his birth, and take many years to become a mainstream product. So some naysayers suggest that, at the very least, Mihailo was exposed to a woman as a baby in order for him to survive the first few months of his life. Whatever the truth is, you can't deny that Mihailo Tolotos' story is a remarkable one, and that it is extremely unlikely to ever happen again.